Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Big Ten Quick Talk podcast. Subscribe if you have not already. Follow on Twitter at Big Ten underscore Quick Talk. In today's video, we will be predicting every single team in the Big 12 and doing it in a timely fashion as well. So let's get right into it. All right, so we're gonna start off here with my bottom ranked team is the Houston Cougars. Oddly enough, they're at number one. Houston, I think, will beat UNLV, lose to Oklahoma, and beat Rice. But then after that, I think they will lose every other game on their schedule. Look, Houston still in a rebuilding state. They play a tough schedule. I just don't think that they're gonna win many games this year. You could twist my arm and tell me that they're gonna go 4-8 and beat teams like BYU or Baylor, or pull an upset, maybe beat Cincinnati, but this is how I see it. There has to be a team that takes a hit in this first year, and I think it's gonna be Houston. Alright, second team that we will be discussing is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Cincinnati, I think, is in a similar boat. I don't think they will take quite as much of a hit, though, as I see them starting out 4-0, beating Cincinnati, Pitt, and Miami of Ohio, and they will start out 4-0, in my opinion. Plenty of momentum there. I think they lose their next two. They will lose to Arizona State, lose at Colorado, and they will just lose the rest of their games, in my opinion. I the Cincinnati team isn't very deep. They're good enough to win some games. They could go 5-7. You could twist my arm even into saying that they might be a bowl team, and I'm not gonna fight you, but hey, I just think there are going to be bad teams in this league, and I think Cincinnati does not have the depth to be a very good team. Next up, Brigham Young, BYU. I think BYU will start 1-0, and after that, I think they will lose to SMU. They will beat Wyoming, lose to Kansas State, and lose to Baylor. But I think that they beat Arizona in week 8. That would be their 5th. And then after that Arizona game, I think that they will hit the skids. They'll lose to Oklahoma State, lose to UCF, who we will preview in this video. I think will be very good. They will lose to Utah and Kansas. Those are 4 games right there that I think are going to be losses no matter where you play them, because they're 4 very good teams that they play in a row. I think you lose at Arizona State. I think Arizona State and BYU are along the same lines as a caliber of a team. And then you beat Houston to end your season. So I think that's how BYU season is going to go out. Speaking of Arizona State, let's go straight to them. There they are. All right, Arizona State. I have them beating Wyoming. I have them losing to Mississippi State. This will be a close game as we get to the SEC predictions tomorrow or later tonight, wherever I feel like it. We'll preview Mississippi State and why I think that they might be a better than what people think. I think Arizona State will beat Texas State, and in their week 4 game, I have them losing to Texas Tech. And then they come off that bye, they get recharged. And going into week 6, still think they'll lose to Kansas. I think they'll lose to Utah. Those are 2 of the better teams in the Big 12. Like we said earlier, I think they'll beat Cincinnati. And then after that, I think they will lose to Oklahoma State. They will lose to UCF, and they will lose to Kansas State. They will beat BYU, and they will lose to Arizona in that game, going 4-8. Last team in this tier. Houston was a bit below the others, but there's a definitive lower tier in my opinion, and we're going to finish that off with Texas Tech. Texas Tech, I think, is not going to be as good as people think. They could definitely be a sleeper, but maybe I'm sleeping on them. But I just don't see it for them this year. They're going to start 5-0, though, according to yours truly. They have an easy non-con there with Albion Christian, Washington State, and North Texas. And I think they'll beat Cincinnati. That will be their only conference win. However, I think that they will lose to Arizona, lose at home to Baylor. Baylor's going to be better than what people think. They will lose to TCU, Iowa State, Colorado, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia to go 5-7. They could get to a bowl game. All they's got to do is get one more conference game. Excuse me, they did get 2 conference wins there. That's my bad. But honestly, I just don't see it this year for Texas Tech. All right, we're going to go rapid fire through this next tier. I have TCU making a bowl game at 6-6. They will beat Stanford on the road. They will beat Long Island. I think that they lose to UCF in week 3. They go on a bit of a losing streak and they lose at SMU and at Kansas. But I think TCU will beat Houston going into the bye week where they will lose at Utah. They'll beat Texas Tech. They will lose at Baylor and they will beat Oklahoma State. And I think they will lose to Arizona and beat Cincinnati as well. I think that they're a team that you could talk me into 8 wins, but I only see 6 right now. Could they beat Baylor? Absolutely. Could they beat SMU? Absolutely. Could they beat Arizona at home? You could talk me into it, but this is how I see it right now for the TCU Horned Frogs. All right, so here is the Colorado schedule, all predicted. I think they will go 6-6 with losses at Nebraska, at Arizona, at Kansas, and then playing host to Utah and Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Look, they have a tougher schedule. I think that Colorado, they're a great September and October team, which is why I think they'll start out 4-1. With that loss to Nebraska, again, we could do a video on that all by itself. We could do a 45-minute video on Colorado alone. Honestly, a half an hour video on Nebraska, Colorado as a whole, as a game, but we don't have time for that here on the channel. Look, Colorado's going to be a pretty darn good team. They're going to go bowling. They're not going to contend for the Big 12 championship. If they are going to do that, they would have to beat 3 of 4 against Kansas State, Kansas, Utah, and Oklahoma State. And frankly, I don't see them beating any of those teams. They would be lucky if they beat one of those teams once. Hate to be pessimistic, but this is what I think about Colorado. On the brighter side of things, I think that they will take care of business, get a upset victory at UCF, and I think that they're going to be a pretty dark. All right, next team is the Baylor Bears. Baylor, I think, will be a very up and down team, to say the least, and you're going to see that through this. I think Baylor will beat Tarleton State. They will lose to Utah and beat Air Force. Right away, you can see a little bit of a pattern emerging. They're going to lose to Oklahoma State in week 9. Coming off of the bye, I think they will lose to West Virginia, and I think that they will lose to Kansas. They're going to be 6-6, and look, they're going to be an up and down team, as you see. As I predicted them to go win-loss, win-loss, win-loss all the way down the schedule, because of the fact that I think they're going to be very volatile. They're going to be an exciting team, and they're going to have their ups and they're going to have their lows. Okay, moving on to Iowa State. Iowa State, I have going 7-5. That Iowa game really could tip their season. If they win that game, they could be 5-0 heading to Morgantown against West Virginia. And if they do that, they honestly could beat West Virginia, who I think will be a very good team. But I think that they will narrowly lose to Iowa. Iowa's defense is just really, really, really good. Their quarterback situation is terrible, though, which is why I have Iowa State even in the game to begin with, because Iowa is going to be incompetent on offense as per usual. But again, let's just continue on. I think that they will lose to Kansas in week 11. They will lose in week 13 and 14 against Utah and Kansas State. They could flip that Kansas State game. I'm not going to lie. They really could. They're going to be 6-1 at home, in my opinion. They're going to take care of that non-con with North Dakota and Arkansas State. They're going to be a very solid team. And you could even talk me into 9 wins if you wanted to. They could definitely beat Kansas State if they wanted to, and they could definitely beat Iowa if a couple balls bounce right for them. Okay, next team, we're going to take a jump up here and go to UCF. I think this is our better tier of teams. Starting with UCF, I think that they will take care of their non-con, win all 3 of their non-con games. For their first loss will be in week 5 to Colorado. And then in week 6, I think they will lose to Florida. But fear not, I think they will beat Arizona in week 10. They will lose to West Virginia and they will beat West Virginia, and they will lose to Utah. I had them flipped, and I think that they will go 8-4. UCF, very good team, very well head coached, and got a crap ton of players in the transfer portal. I think they will go 8-4. All right, so moving from UCF, we will go to Arizona. Arizona, I think, is going to be a bit better than UCF, as I have them winning their first two non-con games. They will lose at Kansas State, which will haunt them through the rest of the season, in my opinion, since they want to make a Big 12 playoff push. Then I think they will lose to Utah as well. If they really want to make a Big 12 playoff push, they got to win one of these two games, and I think they lose both of them. The rest of the games have already been predicted, and I think that they will beat West Virginia at home in week 9. Let me know your thoughts down below on this prediction. All right, next team is the West Virginia Mountaineers. West Virginia is one of the more interesting teams in college football. I think they are again getting slept on. I think that they will lose to Penn State, but they will beat Albany and Pitt. And I also think they're going to beat Kansas at home. I think they will lose at Oklahoma State, and that puts them at that point at 3-2. And then I think they will beat Iowa State and Kansas State. They're going to be that team that just gives everyone one loss. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, UCF if they're good, Kansas if they're good. They're going to finish with that one or two losses, and they're going to be like, darn, if we had that loss back, we would be probably in the college football playoff, definitely in wherever Big 12 championship, but West Virginia is going to be that thorn in everyone's side, but I don't think they're going to be quite good enough to the point where they are just, beating everyone and they're going to be recognized as a national powerhouse. I don't think they're that type of team, but again, just all subjective on my part. I think that they will go 8-4. Up, we have the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas, I think, will be very good this season, and I could honestly see them going 12-0. But to tamper my expectations for them a little bit and be a little bit more reasonable and not be so bold as myself to predict them to be that good, I think that they will go 10-2 with a loss at their rival Kansas State and a loss at West Virginia. Like we said, the Mountaineers are going to spoil a lot of teams' dreams. But if they beat West Virginia or if they beat Kansas State, everyone's in a world for hurting if Jalon Daniels stays healthy. And their schedule is relatively easy. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Baylor, BYU, Arizona State, their non-con TCU, and Houston. These are all teams that they will beat by 7+, 10+, in my opinion. I think that Kansas will be very good this season. All right, next we will be going to Kansas State as we round out the top 3. You will know who I have winning the Big 12 here momentarily. I'm going to just fill out those non-cons where they beat UT Martin and Tulane, and I have them losing at West Virginia. Need I repeat myself? I think the Mountaineers will be a team that kills everyone's dreams. It will come down to that Oklahoma State game. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Oklahoma State, and I'm going to predict the rest of their ones, except for that. So they're going to be 9-0. Let's go to Utah. I think Utah will beat Southern Utah and Utah State. So it comes down to these 2 or 3 games. Utah playing Oklahoma State for a chance to be 12-0, and Oklahoma State playing at Kansas State. I think Oklahoma State will beat Kansas State, putting Kansas State at 10-2 and out of that of the Big 12 championship game, and I think Oklahoma State will also beat Utah. I think Oklahoma State is a darn good team. They will be in the college football playoff, and they will beat somebody up physically. Doesn't matter if they even win or not. They're going to go out there and be the baddest dudes on the field on defense, especially, and with Ollie Gordon at running back, if he can stay on the field, that's the big thing. And that veteran offensive line, and they just cut back on some turnovers. I think that they are, and I'm projecting that, I think they will be a top 10 team. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the